Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The Warrior Some the Answer. Coming to you live, edited live. Later, we'll drop it. We're coming to you from the world-famous Carousel Room in downtown Wamego, Kansas today. As my guest, I have a man that's been known as the Beast of Boston. He's been known as the Burger King. He's been known as Lindy, not the one that flew across the Atlantic, and by many other names, I'm sure. Mr. Dave Lindstrom, welcome to Wamego. Welcome to my podcast.
Buck, it's great to be here. It's great. I love the nicknames, and I got to tell you, this Carousel Bar is something else to behold. It's fantastic.
Well, it's world famous for a reason.
It is, and it's great to be in Wamego.
Outstanding. Well, Dave, we got a lot to talk about tonight, but let's start with, where'd you grow up? How did you grow up? Something like that.
Well, you gave me some great nicknames there when you opened up with one that you didn't give me that was given to me in middle school. I'm kind of an overachiever, and in middle school, when the two oldest boys, if you have pickup games, the two oldest boys are always they stand out there, and the rest of us all stand in front of the wall, and then they pick for pickup games.
I was usually the last one. Yeah, I remember how that worked.
Well, I do too. And my nickname was, I don't want them, you take them. So that was another one of my nicknames, you take them. And then I end up, growing up in Boston with a big family. I have 5 brothers. My dad, my mom was living with 7 men for her whole life. She was a saint, and grew up in the Boston area, went to Boston University, and came to Kansas to play for the Chiefs in 1978, and this has been my home ever since.
What do your other siblings do?
I have 5 brothers. 2 of them live in Florida, and they manage real estate down there. I have a brother who's in Minneapolis, and he is vice president of a company called Ergodyne, and they make safety equipment for highway workers, those orange vests and back supporters, and all kinds of things for ergonomic work. And then I have 2 brothers in Massachusetts, where I grew up, that stayed back there. One is a medical salesman, and the other one is a retired teacher and football coach.
What did your dad do when you were growing up?
My dad was, it was funny. My dad taught me about what sacrifice is all about, because he had 6 boys, wasn't making a lot of money, and he took a job at Boston University as a groundskeeper because he wanted to not only get a job that paid him a little bit more than he had prior to that, but he also, one of the benefits that he knew he couldn't afford to send his kids to college, to get a college education, but as an employee of Boston University, all of his children had the opportunity to go to Boston University free, tuition free, and what he didn't know is 3 of his sons would go on and play professional football, and so we could have gone many other places, but most of us chose to go to Boston University to honor my dad.
Was he a big man?
He was not a big man. He was probably 5'9", 160, and he has 3 sons that are well over 6 foot tall. I'm 6'6". I have a brother 6'7", and another brother 6'5". Our mailman was really tall.
I've heard of those stories. Saw that video once. Where do you think the athletic ability to put 3 kids in the professional sports?
Yeah, I think it's not so much athletic ability. Everybody has an innate ability to do things, and as I said before, in my youth, I was not a very coordinated person. But you work hard, and if you want something bad enough, you'll do what it's necessary to get it, and training hard and trying to make yourself a better person, a better athlete, better conditioned, better prepared. Those are all things that I think most of my brothers went through. But my mom's dad, my grandfather on my mom's side, was a professional boxer, and he had many things to overcome too. He was completely deaf, and he was a professional boxer, and he was an inspiration to us too. So I think that's where we did.
I think that helps. You can't hear your corner yelling negative things at you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's nothing wrong with that.
It works in campaigns too. So if I maybe I ought to get some earplugs.
There you go. So one of the things that I wondered about was, like, throughout your high school career, was college football a given?
No, it wasn't. In fact, I just recently reconnected with my high school quarterback. And I was probably, well, not probably, definitely, when I was a sophomore in high school, we had one high school in my town. And because it was such a fast-growing town back in Weymouth, Massachusetts, my junior year, they divided into two high schools. And if they didn't divide into two high schools, I never would have had an opportunity to play because they divided all the talent from the sophomore year into two high schools. I had an opportunity to play, and so that really gave me the chance that I needed to get on the field and become a better player.
And then when you wound up at Boston College, how did that progress?
Well, I think most of the time in high school, I would have been probably the 15th person on my team that someone says that guy will go to college. But I was tall, and I was fast, and I was determined, but I was raw, and I had a lot of potential. So I think people offered me on potential. But I did have offers to go pretty much anywhere in the country, and my dad, who I really respected, and he said, "Dave, I'd like you to go where I can watch you practice every day," and not because he wanted to keep a thumb on me, but just because he wanted to see his son. And I, as a dad now, I don't have a son, but as a dad, I can understand that now more than I ever did then.
When you're thinking back to high school, thinking back to college, like coming out of college, was playing in the pros a given?
No, it wasn't. I would have been probably someone who you say, again, has potential. And I was a 6th-round draft pick of the San Diego Chargers. I started in college as a sophomore, and because freshmen weren't allowed to play varsity. And then I hurt my knee, and I had an opportunity to redshirt for a year. And so I blossomed my second sophomore year, that extra year. And then I went on, and I started to perform well, and I enjoyed the game. I understood the game a little bit more, and so I was from a small school. Boston University doesn't even have football any longer, but their program was Division I AA, and I was able to secure a place to get drafted. So, yeah, and it was with hard work and good coaching and support from my family and teammates and friends.
Who'd you get drafted by?
I got drafted by the San Diego Chargers, and that was a story in and of itself. Here I was, come from a blue-collar family, had very little, and go out to San Diego, and all of a sudden I had a $15,000 signing bonus. You know, it's not like what they're talking about today with this $500 million contract, but I wasn't MVP either. I thought I was in tall cotton. I thought I was in heaven. I was San Diego. I was single. I got a $15,000 signing bonus, and they offered to pay me $30,000 a year, and I thought I was in heaven. But I will tell you now that my pension as a 65-year-old retired football player, my pension is far more than any year I played for the game.
Well, the game has exploded.
Yeah, it has.
In terms of dollars
It
over
has.
the last years.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you play at all that rookie year?
I did. In fact, if you want, I'll tell you a great story.
I want.
It's a fantastic story. My rookie year, I'm with San Diego, and we're playing against the Los Angeles Rams, and the Los Angeles Rams played this time at Anaheim Stadium, where the baseball, the Angels play, and their quarterback that year was the famous Joe Namath. He retired from the Jets and got signed by the Rams, and so he's playing for the Rams, and I'm in the game with Joe Namath. Joe Namath and I are on the same field, and here I am, a nobody, and Joe Namath's on the field, and I'm thinking of him in that fur coat of his and those commercials with the pantyhose.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I'm thinking, someday, when I'm 65, I'm going to tell my grandchildren that I sacked Joe Namath in a game. So I was determined to get a sack that day. But what I didn't know was I had to play against Jackie Slater.
Oh, yeah.
Jackie Slater is he's an NFL Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
He's among one of the best players, 100 players to play ever in the history of football. And so I'm playing against Jackie, and I'm going to go back to that Sandlot analogy I made earlier about you take 'em. Well, also, sometimes when the tough guy gets challenged by someone who's not really that tough, sometimes the tough guy just puts his hand on the other guy's forehead, and the little guy goes like this and can't even connect. That was me. I couldn't get near Joe Namath, so I thought by the fourth quarter, I lowered my expectations a little bit. And so when the two teams have their huddles, I'm still playing against Jackie. The offense huddle's over here, the defense is here. I walk over to the offensive huddle, and I touch Joe Namath on the side, on the arm. And Jackie Slater looks at me, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Joe," I said, "Jackie," I said, "I wanted to tell my grandchildren someday I sacked Joe Namath, but you're so good, you make it, at least I can tell people I touched him in the game." And that's the closest I came to Joe Namath.
That's pretty good. It's not bad.
Yeah, that's a true story. Unfortunately, I'm embarrassed to tell you, it's true.
How did you wind up in Kansas City?
Yeah, I was on injury reserve that first year in San Diego, and then the next year was working hard. I thought I was going to be a San Diego Charger. They had 4 guys that were all pro on that team, and I was a young guy, and I was someone who had potential, but they were ready to go to the playoffs right then. So they released me, and I was picked up by the Kansas City Chiefs in 1978. Marv Levy was the coach here, and it was one of the best things that happened to me for many reasons. The first reason was it allowed me to come to Kansas and enjoy a place that I've been here now for 42 years. My wife and I decided after playing football for 9 years that this was where we wanted to make our home. But it also allowed me to fulfill a lifelong dream, and that is to play in the NFL. And I was proud to play for the Chiefs for 8 more years.
So I guess one of my favorite stories, being an Oakland Raiders fan, is that in a way you helped my team win the Super Bowl one year.
No, I did.
Yeah,
I did. Yeah, and I'm drawing a blank here right now. But your backup quarterback was at the time Jim Plunkett. Yeah.
Yep.
And this was 1981, and I'm in there, and I sack the starting quarterback, and he breaks his leg. Now, I didn't intentionally break his leg, but I was part of the group that was in on the side.
Might have got a small bonus, but you didn't intentionally do it.
There was no nothing, no bounty on his head or anything like that. But anyway, Jim Plunkett comes in. He was the backup quarterback, had just been released or traded from the Patriots, and a former Heisman Trophy winner. And he comes in, and he ends up not only getting the Raiders to the Super Bowl, but winning the MVP that year. So yes, that's a true story.
I won a little money that year.
Okay, did you?
I was in college that year, and I won a lot of money.
And they beat Philadelphia that year.
Was that Philadelphia?
Yeah, that was Philadelphia.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know I made a lot of mistakes. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Probably spotted me several beer tabs and 9-ball games.
Yeah.
You know, because I wasn't the greatest pool player. So,
in fact, I will tell you, I have an affinity for Oakland. I hate the Rotten Raiders. Okay, I hate the Rotten Raiders because they're our arch enemy here in Kansas City. But I do have a lot of respect for former Al Davis, past Al Davis. I always loved the fact that he just said, "Just win, baby, just win." And he had a commitment. And every time you walked on the field in Oakland, there was a sign there that said "Commitment to Excellence." And it resonated not only with the Raiders, but with the other folks that were playing there. What I didn't like about the Raiders is they would have grass fields, and they would always have they wouldn't cut the grass there and they'd flood the field. So you had to have the right cleats on.
I can't imagine the Raiders would ever do anything like that. I find that hard to believe.
But what my next tie to the Raiders is. The guy who got me involved after I retired from the Chiefs, for 25 years I owned and operated Burger King restaurants, and the guy who got me involved with that was Jim Otto. And Jim Otto has become a very good friend of mine, and he's an NFL Hall of Famer too, number 00 for the Raiders. And he and his wife Sally are terrific people, and they still live in Northern California. And Jim has suffered a little bit now from dementia. And also, he has had multiple.
Those knees were.
He's had one leg removed because of all the operations. Yeah,
but boy, he was committed to the Raiders.
He's committed. Yeah,
he'd sit up in that box.
Yes, he would.
Next to
Al Davis.
Al Davis, almost every game.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know how he got up there sometimes.
Yeah, it was good.
Tell me a little bit about maybe the difference between Raider Week and some other practice week.
Anybody we played in our division, the San Diego Chargers, the Denver Broncos. At the time I was playing, Seattle Seahawks were also in the AFC West, and that was in our division. And then the Raiders. That was always big weeks. And the Raiders, because of the history between Kansas City and Oakland, with I think it was Matuzak or Hendricks hitting Len Dawson back in the day. That was before my time. But that had created a little bit of animosity between the two teams, and there was always that additional competition that was making up the rivalry.
Yeah. I was a little kid. I had a cousin that lived in Kansas City, and she was big in, I don't know, some big insurance company. You're a little kid, you don't know what they do, but she had season tickets to Chiefs, and she took me to 2 Raiders games. And I'd be the only Raiders fan, though. But luckily, I was a little kid, so nobody held it against me back then, you know. But they were almost always field goal games. They were almost always brutal. Yeah.
And there's also, they're in Vegas now, and that new stadium. It's one of the best stadiums.
It's gorgeous.
It's good. I've not seen it, but I've seen.
I haven't seen it completed, but I was there, and they had the facade on it, and it looks like the Raiders stadium.
Yeah, it's Darth Vader.
Yeah,
it's
it
the
is.
Dark Star.
It is.
Well, one of the contractors that built the stadium, that was involved in the construction of the stadium, my understanding is, buried a Chiefs flag underneath the foundation. So I don't know if that's a curse or what it is, but hopefully it'll bring some victories to the Chiefs going forward.
Now I'm hoping the Raiders get a little of the old magic back, but I don't know. That was different in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. They were that was just a different mystique back then.
It was.
So throughout your athletic career, tell me the difference between gifted athletes and maybe people who didn't really have the skills, but like you said, had the work ethic to get there. I mean, it takes a lot of athletic ability to start with, but you had to have known both kinds.
Yeah, no, I did. In fact, I played with several. I was always envious of some of the players who I would see perform well on Sundays, and some nights before the game, they would be pounding back double martinis, and I'm thinking, how do they do that? I'm going to bed at 8 o'clock, and I'm getting cleat marks all over my chest, and these guys are burning the candle at both ends, and so they were actually gifted. But I think the big difference there was the fact that I ended up playing 9 years. The average is 3 years in the NFL, and I was fortunate to play 9 years, and a lot of those guys that burn the candle at both ends, they don't last that long, but they are gifted. And you have, when you have a gifted athlete that really works hard at it on and off the field, those are the guys that have the longevity. And I think a good example of that is someone who works and has the ability is Tom Brady, the quarterback for the Patriots, and he's been one of those guys. A guy I played with that wasn't a quarterback, that had that same kind of mentality, that worked really hard off the field, but was immensely blessed with talent and vision, was Art Still. Art Still, number 67, he's in the Chiefs Hall of Fame, went on and played a little bit, ended his career in Buffalo, but he was also a phenomenal player.
Yeah, speaking of burning the candle at both ends, they used to talk about that Kenny Stabler knew the playbook forward and back, but he only learned it by neon lights. He never read it under it was always a neon light that you read the playbook
I got you. Well, I will tell you a Kenny Stabler story, too. That, I mean, I don't want to reminisce about all these stories, but my rookie year here with the Chiefs, Art Still and I are rookies, and there's 3 or 4 of us that are, we're getting ready, and we're going to play the Raiders. And we're in Kansas City, and you're going through the tunnel, getting ready to get introduced to go out on the field. And we start walking through to the tunnel, and just as we're walking there, the Raiders start coming out of their tunnel. And we have prepared all week. We really want to beat these guys. They're our arch rivals. And then all of a sudden, we became, Art Still, myself, Sylvester, all the defensive linemen, we became like little kids, because we look and that's Kenny Stabler. That's Kenny Stabler. I can't believe it. And here we practice against him all week, and we're ready to play him. And then when we see him, we start melting like we were little school kids. It was amazing. I'm surprised we didn't go up and ask him for his autograph.
Yeah, it wouldn't look good to have like a signature on your jersey or something. It wouldn't have went over well.
But we were excited. So when you talk about Kenny Stabler, he was one of the best. He was phenomenal.
So football career, you said 9 years. Like you say, you could probably tell stories all the time, but tell me about the difference in terms of preparation, physical preparation and mental preparation today, and what they have available. And even, in the early 80s, like what was a regiment? Like what was a workout regimen?
Well, when we did it, when we first of all were there, it was male. It was guys worked in the off season. I had a job in the off season too, so the money wasn't the way it is now. Now it's such a specialized game, and there's so much. It's such a big business that they require you to be 24/7 involved with what's going on there. In fact, your contract actually. In my day, there was nothing in the contract that said you have to work out so many days a week. You either did it or you didn't do it. Now they actually write that into the contract, but it's so much specialized nutritionally. They monitor what the guys eat. When we were there, we used to bring our lunch pail or whatever we brought from home, and so it was almost like Fred Flintstone type thing. And now it's the Jetsons now, and so it's changed a lot in that regard. There's when I was there may have been 7 or 8 coaches. Now there are probably 17 to 25 coaches. There's almost as many coaches now as there were when on the team. So everything's specialized in that regard. They regiment it, but it's big business now, and it's specialized. Someone doesn't play both ways now, and they didn't necessarily when I was there play both ways either. But in the Super Bowl era, there were guys who actually played both ways.
Yeah.
I talked to Len Dawson, Chiefs great, and he told me that when he was at Purdue, he never came off the field. He was the punter. He was the place kicker, he was a defensive safety, and he was the quarterback. He never came off the field, and I can't even imagine that.
And he smoked and he drank beer at halftime.
And then after the game, he went and did the sports.
Yeah, you're right.
So it has changed. But when you pay someone like I think he's a wonderful young man, and he's a great example of what a pro should be, Patrick Mahomes. When you have a guy like that on the team, you want to protect your investment. They spent $500 million, invested $500 million on him, and but he's brought us a Super Bowl championship for the first time in 50 years.
Yeah, and hopefully they invest $500,000 in a in to protect him for the next 15 years.
Yeah. So it has changed. The game has changed.
What can you say that is like? In fact, a differential. What did you weigh when you played?
I was about 265. There was nobody in the league when I played that was 300 pounds. No one I know of. There may be been a guy here or there on some team that I wasn't aware of. The heaviest I ever was 265. And now, if you're not 300 pounds, if you're not in your alignment, they think you're anorexic. They think there's something wrong with you. So it's guys are bigger, faster, stronger than they ever were before. It's part of it's nutrition, part of it is training, and you and I talked a while back about the NFL is pretty specialized at what they do, and in the military, I wish the NFL would do some more things with co-sponsor some things with the military to help to allow their training facilities for people in the military.
They certainly know how to. Keep people healthy, even when they're dinged up. They know how to keep people healthy enough to perform at a super high level. And that's something that the military could use some of those specialties. So could the heavy end of the law enforcement. When you carry 65 to 100 pounds of gear around every day, and it takes a terrible toll on your body. So there's definitely some things out there that. Even if it's just the knowledge, and I think they are getting. I think that is an out for some of the, maybe some of the NFL players that are borderline, but have some knowledge in kinesiology and that kind of thing. Possibilities there. So you got out. Probably didn't have tons of money in the bank.
Well, I had
comparatively.
I did. I did because I was pretty frugal as a player. I wasn't one of the guys who burnt the candle all those times, and so I saved my money. And here's another funny story: is when I came to the Chiefs, I was a second-year guy in the league, and I'm single, and all these guys on the team are married, and I'm thinking, I'm dating a gal from California. I'm thinking, wow, nobody wants to go out with me at night. They're all married. They're all homebodies. And so I proposed to my wife, and I said, come on, let's get married. And so she said, okay. Well, the next year I come back, my third year in the league, my second year in Kansas City, I come back and they cut all the married guys and they bring all these single guys in.
Well, hopefully you married her for some other reasons besides
No, I did.
all your friends were married, you know?
No, I did. But it's just, I tease my wife about that too. And, so anyway, I was a loser on both ends at that time. A winner. I was a winner on both ends.
Yeah. You might want to look in there when you say that.
Yeah, I was a winner.
There you go. So when you got out, how did the transformation to business happen?
Well, it actually, I was unique in the fact that 99% of players who play in the NFL, they either are cut or they're replaced by someone faster, stronger, or they're injured. And I was neither of those. I had an opportunity to open up my own chain of restaurants, Burger King franchisees, and a franchise. And so I went to the coach and I talked to him and I said, I have an opportunity, but Burger King is telling me they want someone to do this full time and they want to see me in transactions. They want to see that I've retired. So coach, what do you think I should do? And the coach said that, we want you to stay on the team. We need you on the team, but we understand you have a business and you have a family and you have a life after football, so it's up to you. And I ended up making the decision to leave football after 9 years. And it was a tough decision, but with my background in real estate, I thought that this was the right thing for me to do. My wife and I were committed to being partners in this business, and we did that for 25 years, but I ended up leaving on my own terms. It took a little bit longer to open up that first restaurant, more than 2 years after I retired, to get the zoning and everything in place, but I did save some money, and by the time we were ready to open up that first restaurant, I was down to my last $5,000. So it was a drain. It was a drain. And that experience is what got me involved in politics, because I had to go through a zoning process with the local city officials. And I wasn't real pleased about how a business person was treated. I thought that they could have done a far better job, at least in my opinion. And so I plugged into Rotary, I plugged into Chambers of Commerce, and I said that I'm not going to let this happen again. I'm going to make sure that next time I go in, I'm going to know what I need to do and who I need to have representing me there.
Where did you open your first?
In Overland Park, right in Overland Park on College Boulevard there, and that was our first restaurant, and it was very successful. We opened that for 2 or 3 years, and it gave us enough profit to open up another restaurant. So we opened up the second one through proceeds from revenue that we were generating from the restaurant, and then we did 3, and then we did 4, and we had an opportunity to do more, and I was ready to do more, but for some reason, God was looking out for me over my shoulder. It was around 2005, 2006 in that area, and I just wasn't comfortable with what was happening with the development. And it ended up being that 2008 we went into recession, so I'm glad we didn't go forward. So we stayed at 4 restaurants.
So you started with the restaurants in 1990-ish. Would that be?
No, it would have been 2000. No, it would have been 1986.
86.
86,
okay.
and my first restaurant opened up in 1988.
Yeah.
Took me 2 years to get it open.
Overland Park's changed a lot since then.
Oh, it's changed a lot. Yeah. The whole Johnson County. Johnson County for the last 30 years has been growing at a pace of 10,000 people a year. So they've been growing, and since now it's up over 600,000 people in Johnson County.
And you got started on that. It was still Overland Park was. Like I say, it was pretty small. It was a fairly small.
It was probably
community.
75,000 people.
Yeah, people knew each other in the neighborhoods.
Sure, they did.
And now, but you've been involved in the community in a lot of different ways over those years. You've seen a lot of that. What are some of the reasons?
Well, the main reason is, and this will go back to my family. I learned about sacrifice from my dad. I told you about that, him taking the job at Boston University. I think what I learned from my mom more than anything else is when you've been blessed with good health, good life, good occupation, good family, an opportunity to play professional football, an opportunity to own your own business. To those whom much is given, much is expected, and so that's how I got involved in some of these community things. I've been blessed to, I'm still part of a group called the Kansas City Chiefs Ambassadors. It's a group of about 45 former Chiefs players that live in the community. Some are outside of Kansas, but most of us live here in the community. And because what we talked about earlier about the specialization of the athletes today, they're paid so much money that the Chiefs are expecting them to really be 100% into what this game is. And so they want to be involved in the community, but they would say if we have a chance, let's put some of our former players involved in the community as well. And so that's the role of the ambassadors, where we go out and do a lot of things that the active players can't because they're trying to win a championship like they did last year.
And what would some of those, like, for an example, like what are some of those events that?
Yeah, well, we have a golf tournament every year, and we raise hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we give most of that money away. It's a 501c3 organization, so it's all charitable, and we give it away to people and I would suggest if anyone in your listening audience is interested and get involved with the Chiefs Ambassadors, go on to the Kansas City Chiefs website, look up the ambassadors, and you can get guys coming out to your places for events, for charity events. It could be a golf tournament, it could be signing autographs, it could be motivational speaking, it could be being a celebrity waiter, anything. It's just interacting with people and talking, just like you and I are talking about some of the experiences in professional sports.
So that kind of jumps us into the next topic. You're running for United States Senate, and when you say, we're talking just like you and I are talking, I would, from what I've seen in the last year and a half, you spent a lot of time just talking to people.
We do, and that's what this business is about, and it's about representing, knowing who you work for. And I'm not a U.S. Senator right now, but if I become a U.S. Senator, I will work for the folks who elect me, the people of Kansas. And you have to know who you work for. When I use this example, when I was in the fast food restaurant business, if someone came to the front counter and we got something wrong, we fix it. And we fix it because if we don't fix it, they're going to go someplace else, and we may never know it, and then all of a sudden we don't have a business. As an elected official, you have to know who got you there, and your job is to help them solve their problems, putting people together with governmental entities or other people who can help them solve the problems.
As far as what you're running for, it's a very huge, diverse geographical area.
Oh, it is. It's unlike it. I've served in many local capacities. I've been a county commissioner in Johnson County for 10 years. I've been a trustee for Johnson County Community College for 7 years. This is unlike anything. We've been all over the state, and in the last probably 10 days, I've been to, I'm going to guess I've been to 14 different cities, and maybe more than that, maybe 25 cities. But yeah, it's a big state. It's 456 miles across, and about 200 miles up north and south, and so yeah, it's a lot of ground to cover, but it's worth it. And there's some stories I can tell you that I've had an opportunity to meet someone like Mary Eisenhower. Mary Eisenhower, her grandfather was the president of the United States from the state of Kansas, from Abilene, and sitting with her, I got an opportunity to sit with her at lunch, and the next day, I had a pair of gym shorts on, and my wife saw me with my leg and said, "What's all the bruises on your leg?" And I said, "I was pinching myself under the table that I was getting to sit with Mary Eisenhower." It was such a great experience, and Mary, I was inquisitive with her, and I said, "Mary, tell me some stories about your experiences in the White House." And she said, she used this example. She said, "One of the most memorable things that I've ever done in the White House is I got to sit on Charles de Gaulle's lap and play with his eyeglasses." And I'll never forget that. That was a wonderful experience. So yes, yeah, this is a wide, a big, a diverse state, and has some wonderful people. And it's one of the reasons we're running is because we're trying to represent Kansas values in Washington, D.C.
I have a lot in common with Mary Eisenhower and Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Do you?
Yeah, I consider myself the supreme Allied commander of everything that I'm around. So, yeah, I have
There we
that in
go.
common. Yeah,
Well, that's pretty
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, you'd be at the FSA office. They'll want me to sign paperwork, and they'll, you're supposed to write what buy, and I'll be supreme Allied commander.
There we
So,
go.
yeah, we have a lot in common.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me say this to you, because and I know this is your interview, but I want you to know, I talked about what my mother said, and to those who much is given, much is expected, and I am blessed. I am blessed to do all the things that I do because of people like you, people who fought for this country, people who defend this country with law enforcement, and none of that would ever be possible, if there weren't folks, men and women like you who do that. So thank you very much.
Well, you don't need to thank me, but we have a shining example of that in the audience, the small audience today. One of my heroes, Dale Burton, is sitting back there. He was in the Gulf War. He's one of the best deputies in Potawatomi County. He's spent his whole life serving other people. He can't grow a decent-looking beard, though. Poor guy. Like, hang in there, buddy. Hang in there. So tell me about, I'm sure you get a chance to meet, you hang out all the time with Dave Owens. He was the last elected lieutenant governor in the state of Kansas. A lot of people who have, even with the chiefs and the ambassadors, a lot of people who have power or influence. But what about some people you've talked to that don't have any power and influence? What are they telling you out there?
Yeah. They're telling me, Dave, we're looking for, and it's a question I ask everyone, what are you looking for in your next U.S. Senator? And they're saying they want someone that's authentic. They want someone who's tough. They want someone who has the right temperament, who has a commitment to public service and community service, someone who has some business experience that knows what it's like to sign in front of a check. But most importantly, they want someone who represents Kansas values, and that's welcoming, hardworking, and someone who's willing to sacrifice, because they believe that that's what Kansans are all about.
That's interesting. So I have a driving question based on the commercials that are out there on television right now revolving around the Senate race. So why are they destroying each other but leaving you alone? And I have two questions with that. Are they doing it because they don't think you're a threat? Or are they doing it because, they're not very physical, intimidating people, and they're physically afraid that maybe you might run into them at some place and you're going to take offense to a commercial?
It could be the fact that the debate we had a debate in Manhattan, and they asked a question. They said, we want you to serve on the Ag Committee if you're elected to the U.S. Senate. How would you make sure that happens? That was the question they posed to all the candidates there. And my response was, I'm going to arm wrestle whoever is in charge of making that committee appointment. And I thought that was the funniest joke. I thought everyone looked at me like, who is this guy? So it was, but it was funny. But to answer your question, I think there's a couple reasons. First of all, when I decided to run for the United States Senate, as a former NFL player, I have access. One of the benefits they give to former players is that you can, let's just say you and I wanted to be in business together, but we didn't know each other. They're trying to protect the players from getting in business with people who may and have the potential of bringing the player down, public relations-wise or financially or whatever. And so what they do is they offer every former player two of these a year. I can go to the NFL Players Association, and they will hire an FBI group to do a background check on anyone that I'm going to do business with. And so that's a nice benefit that very few players use. So when I decided to run for the United States Senate, I thought, I'm going to call the NFL, and I'm going to tell them I want to do a background check on someone. And they hooked me, they connected me with the right people, and those people, the FBI folks, got on the phone with me and said, who is it that you want to do a background check on? And I said, I want to do a background check on Dave Lindstrom. And they said, that's you. And I said, yes, I want you to do it on me because I didn't tell him I was getting involved with politics, but I know there's opposition research that's done, and people can say and do. Well, I got a thick dossier. It was probably size of a Bible of my life's experiences, and frankly, there was nothing in there that someone could attack me on. So that's one of the reasons why I believe no one's attacking me. I do think that people, because I have a pretty substantial base of people who like me and who have followed what I've been about. I'm serving for the sake of serving, not for the sake of climbing a ladder or trying to to be somebody through politics. And I think people understand that if they attack me, they're going to attack the people who support me. And then lastly, I think to a small degree, there is a part of this that they think, well, Lindstrom may be irrelevant in this race, and so let's not attack him because he's his group is not going to be our group. So I think all of those reasons, and there may be others. I'm probably not the right person to ask that, but that's my response.
I would guess that without a doubt, the front runners in this race absolutely know who their base is.
Oh yeah, no question.
And they pander to that.
Yeah, they do.
And that's politics.
Yeah.
Like as distasteful as it is to me, that's politics. Who do you think your base is?
My base is exactly who I just mentioned. What people are looking for. They're looking for someone with authenticity, someone who's sincere, someone who wants to serve for the sake of serving, someone that has a good combination of business background, that knows what it's like to sign the front of a check, who knows what it's like to employ people, create jobs. They're looking for that. They're looking for someone with integrity that will go and represent them, do the job, and then get out. Someone who supports term limits, which I do, and someone who's not going to Washington to create a career, to create additional wealth. I don't know, there's probably example after example of people who go to Washington, paupers, and come out millionaires.
No, there's a lot of that, yes.
Yeah, and so they're looking for someone who's really just willing to serve. And I hope that I give people that impression, because that's why I'm doing it.
What was that? Maybe Dale remembers that Navy SEAL lost his eye.
Yes,
Crenshaw.
I know who you mean.
His Dan Crenshaw?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that he said in a, I don't know, podcast or something that I saw him involved. I think him and Marcus Luttrell were talking, but one of the things he said is he went to Congress supporting term limits, and while he's still not there to make a career of it, he's kind of leaned against term limits since he's been there because of how complicated the
system is.
The system is.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I've heard the argument that when there are term limits, then the bureaucrats end up running the show, because the new elected officials, they come in and the staff knows more than they do.
Right.
So they kind of lead the staff around, lead the elected officials around. So I know that is a danger of term limits, but it can't be worse than what we have now.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
And I guess if the thing is, if that is a problem, then maybe we could change the system instead of changing. You know what I mean? Instead of keeping it the way it is, maybe there's a change in the system that we can make the way those things operate better.
Well, thank you.
Here you go, Mr. Chrisson.
As it relates to term limits, you look at me, I'm 65 years old, so it's not like...
You have your own term limits.
Yeah, I have my own
There's
term limits.
There's a term limit already imposed upon you.
Yeah, so I'm willing to do this as a Senate term is 6 years. I'm willing to do 6 years. If I do a good job and I'm healthy and people wanted me to go back, I would do that another 6 years, but I wouldn't do more than 12 years. That's,
It's a long time.
It's a long time. It's a long time. It's a long commitment. And it's a lot to ask of your family too. So, and this is a sacrifice not only on their part, but it just in general it is. Yeah.
How did that discussion go with your family when you said you wanted to do this? Because I'm guessing not everybody says I'm going to run for Senate.
No, it wasn't my idea. I started getting people calling me and suggesting that I do it and planted a seed with me. I had to check off 3 boxes when I decided to do this. I had determined that it squared with my faith, and it does. it squared with my family, and they were, we had some of those discussions, very serious discussions, and I was not going to get or put any one of my wife or my two daughters at risk of my offending them or having to do something that was contrary to what they wanted. So I was able to do that, and then the last one was financial. I wanted to make sure that this was not going to jeopardize our family's financial future and my ability to take care of my family. So
Costs a lot of money to run for Senate.
It's pretty expensive, and we have one guy that's in the race right now that's spending $5 million of his own money. So,
And there's probably groups that are spending $2 and $3
Oh, yeah.
million that aren't even necessarily affiliated. Well, they're
Yeah.
affiliated, but they're
Yeah.
not directly affiliated.
yeah, it's I would say in the last 3 months, and we still have 2 weeks now to go before the election. I would say the last 3 months, over $10 million will be spent on this election, and most of it by picking up dirt, putting water in it, slinging that mud to
Yes.
and a lot of that's going on, and we're trying to stay away from that. We're not talking negative about our opponents in this race, the other folks in this race. We're talking about who we are and what we think we can accomplish if
But if
elected.
we did on August the 3rd,
Mm-hmm.
even at your age, on August the 3rd, if we did a battle royal
Uh-huh.
in the ring,
Yeah,
over the top rope,
yeah.
who would be left standing?
There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt. And you know, let me.
It's too bad we can't run primaries with a battle royal.
Well,
I'm
you know,
just saying.
they have packs out there. Why don't we have we'll have WWF
Exactly.
matches? Yeah.
I guarantee you,
Ladder
Vince
matches.
McMahon, Vince McMahon, he'd be in on this
No, that'd
because
be
he
great.
would know how much money he would
He
make.
is a
Pay-per-view.
marketer. Oh,
Yes.
it'd be great.
Yeah.
It'd be great. I don't know that there's anyone in the Senate that I wouldn't challenge. and by the way, this is not why I'm running, but this is an interesting fact about my candidacy. If I am so fortunate as to be Kansas' next U.S. Senator, it'll be the first time in the history of this country that someone who played in the NFL serves in the U.S. Senate.
Oh, really?
Never happened before.
Wow, that
Now,
surprises
the
me.
Congress, yes.
Yeah.
In this U.S. Senate, no.
Huh.
There's been a pro basketball player, Bill Bradley.
Yeah.
And there's been a pro baseball player, Bunting, but there's never been anyone from the NFL serving the U.S. Senate. So I would be the first. And
It's
that
too
would
bad
be.
the NFL isn't pouring $10 million into this election
You're
trying to make
telling
that
me.
happen.
You're telling me.
What are they doing wrong?
You're telling
Hey,
me.
we've got a few days left out there if you guys are interested. you know.
Yeah. You tell. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So should I give my website?
Yeah,
address?
sure, absolutely. You know, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, before we get, we've kind of hit the generic parts of being a senator or why
Yeah.
you're running or
Yeah.
what you want to do,
Yeah.
what people are looking for. I've got a topic that's pretty hot on my radar. And nobody's talking about it. Maybe it isn't as important as I think it is, but I do think that there's something federally we can do, even if it's just to put some pressure, some heat on existing organizations. But this Jeffrey Epstein thing and this pedophile ring and this sex trafficking of young kids, there's got to be ways to, and we're just talking about people with too much power that can control that. And I don't know how to break into that, but I do feel like this should be a topic for U.S. senators and for congressmen and for anybody running for office right now.
Well, there's so many issues like that are just disgusting, and you wonder, you can't turn on the news nowadays and not see something that you say, wow, my parents or my grandparents would turn over in their grave about something like this actually happening. It's almost like science fiction. So yes, one of the reasons why people go to Washington is because they try to gain power and wealth and recognition and become somebody.
It's a little bit of a disease.
It is, and it becomes absorbing, self-absorbing, and it's almost like those old washing machines where you get your shirt caught in a wringer, and it just keeps pulling you in because you become part of what President Trump has described as the swamp. And people get drawn in there, and they start, they acclimate themselves to it. What do they say about how you kill a frog? You put them in hot water, and he'll jump right out, but you got to put him in there and turn it up. I think that's what happens to our elected officials, and we need to send people who want to go there, do a job, and get out, and really not make a career. That's part of what I'm talking about with term limits. That I'd rather have someone go in there and make a mistake because they're listening to a staff member that maybe gives them bad advice. Maybe they make a mistake because that way. I'd rather have that than someone who goes in there and intentionally takes advantage of the system for their own benefit.
One of the things that I want to ask you about in terms of the Republican Party itself, this race has been an interesting race over the last year. But where do you see the Republican Party headed, especially in Kansas? I don't know about nationally, but where do you see the Republican Party in Kansas headed?
Well, I'm maybe not the right person to ask that question. I believe in the Republican Party. I believe in smaller government, less government, letting people have more individual rights, fiscal responsibility, all the things that I believe are on the platform.
Do you think the Republican Party in Kansas believes that anymore, though?
I hope they do.
Yeah.
I hope they do, and I think most people do. But the party and then the membership of the party is one thing. The leadership of the party could be another. And when I say I'm maybe not the right person to ask that question, you may be aware, and I think most people are aware, that the Republican Party tried to get me out of this race. And I thought that was wrong. And I think the way that they went about it was doubly wrong. It was unethical, unprofessional. And it got me, pretty upset at leadership in the Republican Party. And someone asked me today, are you someone who can do the right thing for Kansas regardless of whether it's Democratic or a Democrat idea or whether it's Republican idea? And I said, well, let me just tell you this, that I called for at one point in this race the resignation of the chairman of the party. Because I was disappointed in how they behaved and how the parties behaved. I've been disappointed in the National Party as well and how they've behaved in this race. But then, I look at this and I say, and you know this too, as someone who works with teams, team members can sometimes get on each other's nerves and sometimes say some things and do some things that they wish they could take back. And oftentimes you look at professional sports and you see someone come off the field and the coach is yelling at him and the player yells back at the coach and they have a big shouting match and the TV loves to point that out and talk about how the team is falling apart. And then the next week they say, hey, listen, that was in the heat of the moment, and that was we still need to go back to what our foundation is, what brings us together, and then move on. And that's what I'm trying to do now with the Republican Party, but sometimes it becomes hard because I think people get there is that figuratively described swamp. I think people start thinking they have all the answers, and they for example, asking me to get out of the race was taking away the ability of people to choose who they wanted as their next
Absolutely.
U.S. senator, and that's what this country is all about: choosing our elected officials.
So one of the things that I think about, and obviously unless I look in the mirror over there, I think that I'm a pretty young guy. And I've got a lot of young ideas. And the party itself, in terms of when I first voted for president, was 1980. So, the party itself in 1980 is a big departure from the party, what it is today in 2020. Now, that's 40 years. And things change. There's no doubt about it. But the movement to the left of everything, and even in terms of spending and all this, what I'm wondering is, how does the Republican Party continue to interest young people? Because it's different. I mean, the world's different. It's a different place. My opinion it's just my opinion, but I believe that the people that can be drawn to the Republican Party are more and more drawn to being independents or libertarians because of their disgust with the system and what's happening. So how does the party, because the party's still pretty entrenched in its base, and unfortunately the base is probably my age and up. that vote.
Yeah.
The base isn't our age and younger that vote anymore.
Well, Dave and I talked about this today, Dave Owen, our campaign chairman. We talked about someone who I think is probably the most well-respected man in the state of Kansas, and that's Bill Schneider. And Dave asked me as an athlete, what do you, and I've served on boards with Bill, and I know Bill. He asked me, what do you think was his secret of success and why he was such an impactful coach and someone in the state of Kansas, and especially in Manhattan at K-State. And I said, I think two things, because he was really professional in what he did. He really cared about his job, but more importantly, he made the players that he worked with understand that he really cared about them. And so you ask me what the Republican Party can do. I think with young people, we need to make sure that we're setting an example of integrity. We're doing the things that we should be doing, that we are a nation, one nation under God, that we are a team, and not necessarily talk about something bad about the other person, but also we need to make those young people understand that we really care about their future. It doesn't show, a young person does not get the example that I care about their future if we have a $26 trillion deficit.
No.
That we're telling them, we're going to spend now, but you're going to take care of this later. So we have to stop doing, it goes back to my comment earlier. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I mean, we're not getting the right results by doing what we're doing now. We better hold on to this rudder and make sure that we're plotting the course straight ahead.
And the Democratic Party is always, I shouldn't say always, but recently, in recent history, the Democratic Party has literally been known as the party of heart and caring. And the Republican Party's come across as being more, I don't want to say more intellectual, but operating more off numbers and like they get a bad rap of not caring. But how do you sell something to people who want a free education that we need to stop spending a lot of money and then how do we do that at the same time keeping a strong military and keeping doing the things that the government's supposed to do?
Yeah.
I mean it's a tough sell. Like
No,
what do you think?
Well, I think we have to, first of all, Republicans have to get our message down quickly, and so that we can explain to someone in 30 seconds what we want to do, because the Democrats have done that pretty well in the last 20 years. They've done a better job, I think, of doing that.
Far better job.
And that's part of why they appeal to young people. But I think we just need to go back to the basics of what the Republican Party is all standing for, and then we have to not only talk about it, we have to walk the walk and show young people that we are the party of integrity, because we're not going to give you. You have to work to make things happen for yourself. You're not entitled to anything other than an opportunity. You're not entitled to success, but we're gonna show you how to work. You work with military folks and police, law enforcement folks all the time, and they have to work to achieve. You just have to.
And I would say that the younger generations get a bad rap with regards to not wanting to work. I have a lot of younger friends. They work extremely hard. I see these girls at the local restaurant. They work. During school. They work. It's not the work. It's knowing how to do it and be working towards something that matters. A lot of people just work and they don't ever work towards something that matters, and so they don't get the payoff in the end.
It's working towards something that matters, and here's what I believe is the something that matters: your freedom to make a choice. And what I think the Democrats are offering people is free this, free that, and free the other thing, and a push towards socialism. But really, what that is, they may get something right now. They may get their a free phone or a free education or free this or free that. But what in essence they're doing is they're telling other people that they're going to decide what you get and what you don't, and they're losing their freedom.
And it's hard for me with my agricultural background. to really throw stones with regards to the massive government programs that have been out there for agriculture ever since, I can remember, in the 60s and the 70s with all the different programs. But the one difference that I would say with agriculture, and I'm not justifying all the money that we get paid, but the one difference I would say is a lot of our problems in production agriculture are created by government. They're created by trade deals. They're created by boycotts, and when Jimmy Carter, and got into it with Russia, and they boycotted all our wheat, and like it was a downward spiral, and people. I saw farm ground devalue 50% in about 4 years in the late 70s and the early 80s, and a lot of really hardworking farmers lost everything, and then spent the next 15 years of their lives paying a tax bill because of the basis difference when they sold their equipment and their ground, but those were all created by government. There was nothing there created by the farmer.
Well, there's in this, through this experience of running for office, I've had an opportunity to talk to a lot of people in ag business, and whether they're cattle producers or row crop, they would prefer that they not have some of these subsidies. They just let us go out and do this and work hard. But sometimes they can't control the market either, and so there has to, and with food, it's a national security. I think it's a national security issue, because without food, I mean, that's one of the most essential things we need.
And you go back to Jimmy Carter again in the mid 70s with the oil crisis. Food and oil. Yeah. Those are like you say, definitely those are national security issues. You look at Argentina now, that you just see the problems down in South America with some of the richest, at one time were some of the richest countries in the world, and they can't feed their people anymore.
As it relates to ag, I think it's important to talk about some of the things that I've learned in this campaign as well too. With the president in months ago when he started the tariffs with China, I was talking to a lot of ag folks, and I would ask them, "What's your thoughts about this?" And they said, "Listen, the table has been so tilted toward China that we are pleased. We will suffer short-term pain for the long-term game of getting that playing field level. So, because that's all we want. We just want a level playing field. We want to do the best we can because we think we can compete on that field, but we can't compete if they have all the equipment and we don't."
And I do think that, we made big gains with regards to trade deals in the last 3 years. I do think that we've pushed China to a point to where they're starting to get a little bit reckless. I think that because we've been at war with China for 20 years, whether it was currency or trade deals or what it is, and we're still at war with China. We just haven't fired bullets yet.
Right.
That may happen over around Taiwan, or it may happen around Vietnam here very soon.
Or Hong Kong even.
Who knows? But I do think we've pushed China to the point where they are creating some issues politically here because they don't want 4 more years of what they've just had.
No, I agree with you, and I think anything that's happened in the world, especially in this country, in the last 12 months is political.
Yes.
It's political. And so there's always, they do not like the fact that this president is saying, you may have had this your way with this country for the last 10, 20 years, but it's not going to happen now. We're pushing back.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter what you think of Trump as an individual or as a human being or whatever, but you can't unless you're blind, you can't argue with where he's taken us in terms of foreign policy and where he's taken us in terms of pushing back with economics, around the world. Yeah, he might not be popular with all the world leaders, but he's definitely taken America to a different bargaining position.
Yes, he's defending this country and is putting the interest of this country, which is his main responsibility, first.
And the military personnel that served in the previous administration and then in this administration, and even the one before, but the change 4 years ago in terms of rules of engagement and the ability to go do their jobs and protect themselves. And all you have to do is look at the numbers. All you have to do is look at the casualty numbers and look at the mortality rates, you know, overseas, and you can tell where like things have changed. They're
For the better.
yeah, oh, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. Yes.
Well, and you know, I think what you're talking about in previous administrations with the military is what we're seeing today in law enforcement, because we're seeing. I was listening to a newscast, and it had a lady who had a mother who had a young 3-year-old daughter in the car with her, and I think they were in St. Louis, and they drove into an area that maybe they regretted doing, and it was into one of those protest areas, and they started rioting there. People are jumping on her car. She gets on her cell phone, calls 911. 911 tells her, "I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. You have to call the mayor or city hall." And here's a woman frantically calling for assistance. Rioters on her car. She has a 3-year-old baby in the car that is crying in a car seat, and the 911 operator says, "You have to call City Hall because we're told not to do it." So you talk about holding the rules of engagement, and then you see police that are trying to restore order in certain areas where people walk up behind them and dump water on their head or hit them with a stick, and or worse, or ambush them. And so I agree with what you're saying, and I think we need to be just as supportive here in our country as we are overseas with our military.
So my earliest memories as a child, I was born in '62, so you know, I actually have a memory of Kennedy being killed.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have a memory of his funeral. Perhaps I've just watched it on the news so much.
Yeah.
Maybe I think I have a memory of it. I don't know, but I swear I remember his coffin being pulled down in the wagon, because that was the interesting thing. The Civil War strife, the Vietnam, the protests, the violence of the '70s against law enforcement were in, especially in the big cities, New York, Los Angeles. That changed the country, and it changed the way law enforcement, but there was never a major loss of support for law enforcement throughout that. And you know, right now, I'm not sure that we're not in some, again, in law enforcement, we're required to take, in Kansas, we're required to qualify with our handgun once a year. We're required to take 40 hours of training a year, but the only thing we're mandated to do is 2 hours of bias-based policing training, not learning how not to. And the main thing in that is our own internal biases. And I just think the country has an internal bias right now, or at least a very vocal part of the country has an internal bias against law enforcement, against against any kind of structure, especially in these bigger cities. We don't deal with that so much here.
Yeah. I think that is prevalent in some cities. I don't think it. My hope is that what I see and what I hear from folks that I've been exposed to, and that's primarily in the state of Kansas, is that there is a support for law enforcement. I will say, last night I was in Paola, Kansas, at a parade. And in the parades, we have a vehicle that goes, and I like to walk and talk and shake hands with as many folks as I can, even in this pandemic. You do your social distancing, but every law enforcement person that is there, a law enforcement officer, I made a point of going up there, and we maybe didn't shake hands, maybe we tapped elbows, but I wanted them to know to stay strong, because we need you. We need you, and don't let what's going on with some of these other parts of the country get you down. I can't even imagine how a family feels if one of the spouses is in law enforcement and leaves them to go to work in the morning, especially in a city like Chicago or New York or Portland, and what that spouse will feel like, because it may be, when you kiss them goodbye, that may be the last time you actually see them. So. Those are the things that this country is built on: law and order. We need to support our police and law enforcement, and I believe most Americans feel that way.
Well, the Constitution is still I mean, is still the most amazing document, in my opinion, the most amazing document ever written with regards to the formulation of a government and how it treats its people or how its people treats the government. And peaceful protest is absolutely a cornerstone. The First Amendment, the Constitution, absolutely a cornerstone.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know where the country would be at today if it wasn't for like Dr. Martin Luther King. But this is different.
Yeah.
This is not.
That was legitimate, peaceful protest at that time.
And they had a legitimate right to protest the Floyd incident.
I think so too.
But
peacefully.
But this time, justice wasn't done that day, but justice was done. They were fired. They were arrested. They're being prosecuted.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what they could ask, unless it's going to be a lynch mob. And I thought we were done with that in the Judge Roy Bean days.
Yeah, yeah. And I agree with you. I think sometimes there's more to it than just what they wanted for justice for Mr. Floyd, which was unspeakable what happened to him.
What wasn't right. I mean, we've known for 20 years about positional asphyxia and different things, and so that it just didn't make any sense at the time, and it was a horrible thing. I watched it one time. I don't like watching beheadings, and I don't like watching. I've seen enough things over 27 years. I don't need to watch it on the internet. Right. But it was a horrible thing to watch, and I would tell you there wouldn't be anybody more sickened by it than good cops.
Yeah. Right.
'Cause nobody wants to lose somebody like that. The one thing that we have when we put somebody in handcuffs is we have the responsibility to care for that person.
Yeah.
I mean, they're because they're in handcuffs. They're ours. We take.
I've seen this lately on social media. It's a replacement for the taser. It's like Ebola.
I've seen that.
Is that legitimate?
I don't know. I don't have any idea. I never was a big. I was never a big taser guy, but I like to put my hands on people.
Okay, yeah.
And I like to, I like to end the problems with my hands on them rather than using other, like baby tools, Like, I wanted them to know me when we were done.
Right,
I didn't want to be standing 25 feet away at the end of two pieces of wire. So. Yeah, but that was,
Okay, you've seen it though.
Oh yeah, I've seen it. It looks interesting. I don't know. They used to, didn't the Aborigines catch animals that way or something?
Zorro had something like that.
I don't know, something like that. Yeah. I don't think it's anything new. I just think, they came out with it. Yeah. I like one time, I don't know when it was, years ago, they came out with basically it was just a spray foam. They would just spray foam people and it would be expanding foam and they'd just be stuck there.
Kind of like insulation.
Yeah, that's what they were actually at one time. They were thinking about doing that, but I don't think that ever really made it real well towards the deal. So, so issues that are close to my heart. Like I said, hitting on the child sex trafficking thing. That's something that law enforcement. That's something that government should be interested in. A strong military, giving our guys legitimate rules of engagement, giving them legitimate training, and especially and we talked about this in a different time, giving them the tools to stay healthy while they do it and to retire healthy. And then a strong law enforcement, whether it's federal, state, or local.
Yeah,
those are issues for me. What other issues?
Well, those are important
and
to me
then fiscal.
Too. Yeah, those are important. Fiscal, obviously. I'm pro-life. I'm pro-Second Amendment. I think that as it relates to our military folks, you brought this up. I think that we need to do what we have to do to train our people, to support them financially, to allow them to go in and do the job, and then come home safely. And then when they serve the country, I think it's our responsibility to make sure that we give them opportunities for gainful employment after their career in the military, and so that's important to me as well. Let's see here. I believe my former career was you get paid for performance, and I think that as it relates to our deficit, I know this is a difficult concept. It's not hard to understand, but it's a difficult one to sell in Washington these days, is that I think our elected senators and congresspeople ought to be paid for their performance. In other words, if we have a $1 billion deficit, maybe we suggest that they get docked their pay $100 a year. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot for $1 billion deficit, but $1 trillion deficit, which is what we've had for many years, would dock their pay $100,000 per
Is
year.
that 1,000 billion?
It's 1,000 billion.
Yeah.
It's yes.
See, when you get up
Yeah,
those numbers,
yeah.
I don't
People-
even know what the hell they are.
People don't have a comprehension of it.
You're right. I don't.
So I think that, if someone's going to agree to spend $1 trillion more than we take in, there ought to be some consequences for that. Someone needs to be responsible for that.
I would say that's my biggest disappointment in the Republican Party is when we've had the opportunity, we certainly have not limited spending. And what I would like to see, this is just an idiot out here in the country, but in my businesses and stuff, I have to look at every little chunk. And I have to decide if what I'm spending on an enterprise or something is returning anything. And if it's not, I have to cut that enterprise. And I get government isn't looking for a return on investment dollars, but it's looking for a return on investment in if we're going to pour, hundreds of billions of dollars in urban development, is that urban area actually benefiting and being developed? I would guess in the Kansas City area, and I'm probably thinking more KCMO, but the downtown area, the 39th Street area down around KU Med, those were not good places in 15, 20 years ago. I would guess that very little of that has anything to do with government, that most of that has to do with just people moving into those areas and renovating.
And people caring about what their health care needs are, and KU does a great job with their medical center there.
Well, I went to K-State, so I can't say that KU
well,
does. I just, this is the Chiefs Raiders again, but whatever.
Well, it's government needs to make investments where investments are necessary. We invest in roads and we invest in infrastructure. Those are things that I think we do need to spend money on. But we also need to make sure we're not spending money frivolously. This recovery package that was, I don't know if it was the first one or the second one, or they're now talking about the third one, but the last $3 trillion one had, $25 million to the Kennedy Center.
Yeah.
Now, performing arts is an important part of our culture, but it's not part of a pandemic recovery. And so things like that happen all the time.
My $1,200 wasn't part of any recovery. Now, I will say the waitresses over at Fourth and Elm got much larger tips after I got my $1,200, than they did before. But it wasn't part of the recovery for me.
I think we need to, and this is always someone running for office will say, we need to spend money like it's our own, and not like it doesn't matter whether or not it's going to impact me or not. And that's
Don't you think that budget, though, like if you sat down to digest that federal budget, how many pages? I've heard one time it's 8,000 or 9,000 pages.
Yeah, I don't know how many pages it is. It's ridiculous,
like
and that's why they have so much staff to analyze what's going on. But they have to make hard decisions. Rand Paul has talked about the penny plan, where they just cut 1% out of everything across the board. I don't know. I would be supportive of that just because it works toward balancing the budget. But I don't know if that's the right thing to do either, because that cuts some.
I've never liked it because to me it's like it's too easy. It's not. In other words, if something's important, we need to fund it.
And that's what I say too. That's why I say I don't know that that's the right thing to do, because you need to focus on what it is we should be doing and invest in those areas.
The interesting thing is the Constitution gives us kind of a list of priorities that we can start at, things government's mandated to do, and we could fully fund those things.
Yeah.
And
Commerce and interstate
then we could
commerce
work our way down the
Yeah.
list, and when we ran out of money,
Yeah.
that's how my business works. When
Right.
I run out of money, then nothing else gets any,
Well,
But-
in Washington, unfortunately, they have ink, so they can print some more.
Well, yeah, they do. And that gets us into a whole completely different discussion. When I first started on the Sheriff's Department, Posse Comitatus was big, sovereign citizens were big. We dealt with all kinds of crazy theories, and some of them were local farmers. And I'd stop by the jail and I'd go talk to him. And one guy, especially, he was well, gosh, I found out I'm so gullible. Pretty soon I was convinced income tax wasn't legal and the gold standard was the only way to go.
Yeah.
I had to quit talking to him
Yeah.
because, I'm always going to, by the way, IRS, I've always paid all my taxes in case you're looking out there, always, because I don't want to go to jail.
Yeah.
But he had me convinced at one point. So, yeah, there's a lot of interesting conspiracy theories that somebody
There
can
is.
get wrapped up in.
There is. One thing, we're talking about government. I've always thought that government, one of their main priorities is to protect the vulnerable and at-risk populations in our country. And I think if we do that, and if we just watch our P's and Q's as it relates to not spending more than we need to spend, I think it is a lot simpler than we all make it out to be. But it doesn't mean that it's easy.
No, it's never easy to tell somebody no.
Yeah.
It's never easy to pick and choose winners and losers. And unfortunately, government picks a lot of winners and losers.
They do. They
And,
absolutely do. Yeah.
It'd be a lot better world if they
Are we
just
getting back
picked
to getting back to the Raiders and Chiefs here now? We're talking
well,
about winners and losers.
all I remember were the glory years. I don't remember the last 15, 20 years of the Raiders. I only remember the glory years. So I have selective memory.
Yeah.
I remember the wins. That's
Yeah.
what I remember. I remember Lester, the molester Hayes, pushing
The
receivers
pine tar all over his arms.
Yeah, and he would push receivers out of bounds until they threw a 15-yard flag on him. Like he would do it every play.
Yeah,
And finally, the referee get tired of
Yeah.
him. No, we're talking about government now. So,
Yeah.
what would you? Obviously, they want you on the agricultural committee.
And I want to be on Ag Committee. It's not my foundation, my background, but it is the foundation, and it's the strength, and it's 40% plus
Yeah.
of the economy in the state. And
Let's say it isn't 50% or more of the economy, but if you crash agriculture in this state, there is no other economy.
No, it is imperative for a U.S. Senator from Kansas to serve on that committee. And so I want to do that. I think there are folks like you and others that I could lean on that can help me understand what's going on the ground here as it relates to ag. And so I think that would be my number one priority.
So has anybody talked to you about possibly looking at some type of a major shakeup or change in USDA?
No.
USDA, actual dollars in terms spent with regards to production agriculture, and I could be wrong, I'm pulling this off my head, it's like 2%.
Okay.
Like the vast majority of school lunches, it's all these other programs.
The SNAP program.
They don't, I mean, the two, like they don't, just because it involves food doesn't mean it has anything to do with agriculture. The United States Department of Agriculture does almost 98% of its budget, 95% of its budget. It doesn't have anything to do with production agriculture. I don't know where or who should do those things, but I'm not sure that an organization, and I just think that's happened to a lot of big government agencies.
It becomes political. It
Yeah.
becomes, how do we get this program into or to pass? Well, we slide it in with something else that we know is essential. So
I mean, if the federal government's going to have an education department, if they're going to do it, why wouldn't school lunches be part of the federal education department? You know what I mean? Why wouldn't, why? I just think that that's one of the things in government that needs to be looked at is who's doing what program. And I understand there's a whole bunch of jobs and there's a whole bunch of people that are protecting a little slice of the pie, but it just doesn't. I think that's part of the reason it's become unworkable.
yeah, I've heard you mentioned all these other programs under ag. I've heard two different points of view as it relates to the SNAP program and the school lunches and that type of thing. One of the farmers that I talked to suggested that is an important integral part of what should be for ag because it allows agricultural folks to sell more products to the schools.
That I don't disagree with. That
Okay.
I don't. I mean, I don't think that. I mean, I'm not saying the government shouldn't do those programs. I'm just saying that you're dealing with two totally different entities, two totally different
Okay.
under one department.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and those types of things. I would tell you almost EPA almost has more regulations on farmers than the Department of Agriculture has.
Yes, I've heard that as well.
It's just, and then OSHA doesn't play a huge role in production agriculture, but it plays a huge role in what happens to the product after it leaves the farm,
Yeah.
So, you're just looking at multiple layers of regulation and organizations that we deal with.
Sometimes that complication of bureaucracy in government is intentional because it allows people to get and hide things that they want to get in,
Oh, I agree.
in a covert manner.
Yeah, and I think that's the difficulty of somebody new going to Washington.
Oh, absolutely is, and that's why I believe, and this is folks who have been there, who have counseled me on this, you have to have people who you can trust surrounding you and helping you. My impression is that you have a pretty substantial staff when you become a U.S. Senator in the state here or anywhere else in the country.
And you probably take a lot of advice from whoever left that in terms of the people that they trusted.
Yeah, you do. Absolutely you do. Yeah, and you have to rely on those folks too because they've been there, done that, and that's been their career. But you have to have people who you trust because there may be some people who are just more bureaucratic than they are patriots.
Well, I think that yeah, I mean, I don't think you can run Washington without the bureaucrats.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that we've lost a lot of people being able to make a decision for themselves. Here I don't want to continue to go back to intellectuals because I have a lot of intellectual friends, and I learn a lot from intellectual friends, but they don't do a lot physically, and they don't necessarily make a lot of decisions. They just intellectually they look at decisions that are being made and pick out reasons why it's not good or why whatever. And I think that's a lot of people that are politicians are more on the intellectual level and way less on the doing level. And I think it takes a lot of guts to go there and make a decision and then, explain why you... Have you run into people in Kansas when you've been out meeting everybody that have just flat disagreed with you on things?
Oh, absolutely. It happens all the time.
And how do those discussions go for you?
I'm just honest with them, and I tell them sometimes I can't answer your question because I don't know. I don't have a background in that, in whatever that topic is they ask. Other times I tell them that I do know, but I disagree with you, and I'm sorry that you feel that way. And if you want someone who agrees with you 100%, then I'm going to take you down to the Secretary of State's office, and we're going to file, and you're going to run for office yourself, because that's the only way that you can get someone who agrees with you 100% of the time. And so you do. I really don't mind when people disagree with me, and I don't mind when people say, Dave, I'm sorry I can't be for you because I disagree with this or that or the other thing. And I don't think that that's what Kansans want. They don't want a yes person. They just want someone who is thoughtful, who will do their homework, who will work hard for them, and has the integrity of standing up for what they believe is the right thing to do in the right situation.
You get on the Ag Committee, you'll deal with whatever comes up there. Is there any one issue or two issues that you want to talk about with the people on the Ag Committee?
Oh, absolutely. I've learned over the last several months that we have a problem in this country as it relates to cattle producers and packers.
Packer concentration.
Yeah, and it's concentration into 4 different packing companies in this country, 2 of which are foreign-owned. And I believe that there's some suspicion that there's collusion going on. There's some antitrust issues.
Well, there's not much variance in pricing. That you can't argue.
Yeah, no.
You can't argue that.
And not only that, but the corona, sometimes unintended consequences of the corona was that it impacted the packing houses.
Because they work so close.
Yeah, but they work so closely. So
Right.
some of their folks were impacted by this, the disease, the pandemic. And what it ultimately resulted in and manifested itself into is a backup in the cattle which the kill of the cattle wasn't happening as frequently as normal, and so that lowered the price for cattle. And so if they're paying less for cattle and they're killing less, then the price for the consumer goes up. So they're making it on the other end too. So they may not have intended it to happen that way, and all of a sudden it did. But who knows whether or not that's...
They didn't fix it after it happened.
Well, they didn't fix it.
No,
yeah.
because they were making
Yes,
record profits.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Record profits.
So those type of things, we've recognized that is an issue. We've written a letter. Our campaign has written a letter to the president several months ago as it relates to that, and you can see that on our website, lindstromforsenate.com, and it's a letter to
I think you should look in the camera.
Lindstromforsenate.com. You can look up the letter we wrote to President Trump, and it talks about what we believe is the situation with the cattle producers and the packers. And we know that the president did see that letter, and he shortly after that called for, and I don't know if this letter had any impact on that, but he called for an investigation, and they're still looking into that right now. So that's one issue in ag that I think is really important.
Well, irregardless of the corona impact, which definitely had a huge impact. I mean, and even right now, high-end meat they just can't move because the high-end restaurants aren't open and aren't functioning the way that they were, especially in the big cities. So prime meats and things like that just aren't. They're backing up. They're not selling. But irregardless of that, all you have to do is look at the fire out west. And when we have a fire in one packing plant, when it affects the amount of kill and the transportation of cattle, we probably have an issue in that supply chain. And that supply chain is national security. I mean, there is
no question about it.
Yeah, and so, I don't know what the answer is there. I really don't. I would tell you, we talk about collusion amongst packers. I'll tell you, hands down, there's collusion amongst packers and feedlots. There's feedlots that have gravy deals selling cattle to packers. And then there's small feedlots that don't have gravy deals smelling. It's just not an open market. But having said that, the last time government got involved, I used to, before Tyson closed their Emporia plant, we hauled all our own cattle to Emporia. 75 miles, easy haul. The buyer never set foot in our feedlot. He knew what cattle we fed, and he would pay me $1 over the weekly average. All of a sudden, government set in. They said you have to set the price at the time cattle are sold, which isn't true. You have to grid set the price when cattle are sold. But all of a sudden, all my gravy deal went away, and then when they closed that packing plant, because it was only, they were killing about probably 5,000 head a day, which is not even, big time anymore anywhere. That's a lot of cattle, but it's not big time in these packing plants. And when they closed that, now I'm shipping cattle to Dakota City, to Lexington, and out west, Finney County. The trucking eats up any possibility there is of getting a premium. And that's just, that's, again, I can't argue because I don't run Tyson. I don't understand, their economics and their things, but it directly impacts feedlots in the areas. When you have to now, they're building plants where all the cattle are being fed, but and the economics of size and things like that. It's all changed. It's I'm not complaining. Everything's changed, but we definitely have a problem when we have one plant that has a fire, and all of a sudden we have a supply chain problem.
Well, I've talked to other folks too, and they've told me recently that there are some people who are trying to put together investment groups to create another packing house, and that would be substantial. That would allow for additional.
They've done that a couple of times over the last 15, 20 years, and
then they get bought up,
and they're just not as successful as it's costs a lot of money to build a kill plant today. It takes a lot of money, and you have to have a return on investment. That's not easy. They're all difficult. It's all difficult decisions. The economics of that is hard.
You mentioned transportation as it relates to ag. That's the second thing that if I have an opportunity to serve in the U.S. Senate, I want to be on the ag committee. I mean the transportation committee too. currently chairman of the Kansas Turnpike Authority, and so I have a background in transportation.
I like your new K-tag thing.
Yeah,
I
no,
like that.
the open road tolling.
Yeah, I like that. And
Yeah.
I so when you get on that, when you get there,
Uh-huh.
one thing I want to ask of you is that every state enter into a compact so that no matter where we go, all of our little K-tags
Interoperability.
work everywhere around the
Yeah.
United States.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a request that
Well,
I have
no,
for the
you-
future Senate.
Your
Senator.
request has been federal law for years. In fact, there was a federal law, and I can't tell you which one it is, but that required interoperability of all turnpike, all tolling roads in the country. And that was supposed to have happened sometime in the last 5 or 10 years, and it just hasn't happened because technology doesn't allow it, A. And B, there is what we call silos, and each turnpike authority, even some in Florida and in Texas, there are multiple authorities within the same state. They don't use the same technology.
Oh, really? Now, all my stuff here works in tech. When my daughter went to A&M, so
Yes.
I
Well,
drove
you're-
to College Station a lot. And down 35, it all
Yeah.
works. So.
And we have a reciprocal agreement with Oklahoma, with Texas, and then also with some of the states in the southeast now. So it's happening, but it's not. It's when I say there are silos here, it takes a while for that to break down.
Well, there's no way that the technology doesn't exist. One, I mean, we have more technology in our pockets right now,
Yeah.
a cell phone, than my first computer.
No, it
had,
does. It does
okay?
exist.
The technology
Yeah.
exists. It's just how do we get it to work? And
Well,
everybody uses
and we can get it to work. It's everyone wants. Kansas wants everybody to use our system, so we don't have to go through that expense. Texas wants everybody to use their system, so that's what I mean by.
Well, at least
The
you've
will
heard me.
for cooperation doesn't exist.
Yeah.
How about that? Yeah.
So, what outside of Transportation Committee, outside Agriculture Committee, what kinds of things would you be interested in sponsoring or co-sponsoring, or what would you be like? Do you have any specific items, agenda items?
Yeah, there's a couple things. I mentioned about the deficit in trying to address the deficit. A balanced budget amendment would be something that I would subscribe to very quickly.
Where do you think, though? Where do we get $1 trillion? We're roughly, without stimulus, we're
Yeah.
running $1 trillion deficit
Yeah.
a year right now.
Right.
Where do we get $1 trillion?
So there's ways to do it.
Oh, I know there is.
If
but-
you had to trim from your business, and it meant whether you're going to stay in business or not, you would do it. I don't think there's a will to do that, and it's very difficult. But we have to start by talking about it in a very meaningful manner, and that's what I would propose to do. The other thing that I think would be critical, especially in what's happening, and we talked about this earlier as it related to law enforcement, I think we need to be stricter on what we're tolerating here in this country. I think the feds ought to say, I don't know whether it's a mandatory sentence, you and I talked about this earlier, but I think we need to set an example that if you're rioting, we can have peaceful protests.
Sure, we
But if
need
you-
peaceful
But
protests,
if you're
but-
rioting, if you're looting, if you're burning buildings, if you're trying to intimidate the police by brandishing weapons and trying to create a lack of law enforcement, I think there has to be strict penalties. And I don't know, I'd like to work with law enforcement and with our federal government to say, how are we going to put our foot down? Because we're not going to tolerate this anymore.
I find most of the times the answers are already somewhere on the books. We have RICO laws already on the books that apply to a lot of what's going on now. We have terrorism laws on the books that apply to. We just have to change
Enforce
the
them.
definitions,
Yeah.
and we have to enforce them that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
And until we do, we can pass a whole bunch of new laws, but I'm telling you, there's too many friggin' laws now.
I agree with you. And that's why I'm hesitant to say it has to be this way, it has to be that. I'm just saying we need to listen. We can't put people through what the description I talked about with this lady in St. Louis.
No, we can't.
That's
Too many innocent people are
this,
getting hurt.
This is wrong.
Yeah.
So that's something that we're talking about. And I also would like to serve on the small business, because I think in Kansas, if you have agriculture, which we already talked about, the importance of that, transportation is we're at the center of the country, whether it be aviation, rail, or just roadway and trucking. I think that is something we need to take advantage of more.
You even have a river. You know, you have barges on
waterways,
the Missouri,
yeah.
and you know things. A lot of that kind of stuff to look at. Too.
And I think that one of the things that I would really like to see happen throughout the state of Kansas is us to be a leader in broadband for all parts of the state. And because I mentioned this earlier, that one of the reasons that Mary and I, my wife and I, decided to stay in Kansas is because of the quality of life here. The quality of life is unmatched, and you've been around the world. I have not. I've been to several places, but not a number of places you've been. The quality of life here is, I believe, unmatched in any place I've been. And I think if we can tell other folks that this quality of life is great, they can come here, but they can only come here if they can make a living, and they can make a living without having to be in a big city, because if they have the technology, the broadband to create a business or work from a place like this for companies all over the world, that can happen.
I would say the best thing that's come from the coronavirus pandemic, it has just how many people have figured out what they can do without driving to work every day.
Yeah.
The less vehicles on the road, people spending more time. And I'm not saying maybe they should work all the time from home, but we can do a lot of this from home if we have.
Yeah.
And you know, California has been, they've been on the forefront of this. And I don't know that they called it broadband back in the day. I don't remember what they called it. But they were in the Joaquin Valley, they were setting up, and these guys are running all their irrigation off their cell phones, you know, back in the day.
Yeah.
We can do that with wireless technology today, but it would be way better if we weren't doing it off cell phones, off wireless.
And not only the technology to create entrepreneurs, but the technology to provide health care through telemedicine.
Absolutely.
And people who live in remote areas may not have medical facilities in their backyard.
So what do you think because you brought it up, what do you think I mean, we all know there's a problem with healthcare. What do you think the problem with healthcare is?
I think there's a problem. It's called fee-for-service versus patient outcome. And any program that we have in this country should be accessible, it should be affordable, it should be transparent, and it should be market-driven. Those are the issues that I think our healthcare should, the pillars of the foundation for healthcare. But right now we have a fee-for-service program, which means that if I provide you a service, I get paid for that as a healthcare provider. It doesn't matter if you get better. It doesn't matter about patient outcome. I get paid on the fee for service, and I think we need to change that so that it measures patient outcome. It's kind of like a pay for performance issue as it relates to healthcare.
So my view on healthcare has changed wildly in the last 3 years. Just with a couple of things that I've had go on, and then with changing providers. I have a major medical plan. I have an HSA account. I mean, I think everybody should have an HSA account. And I think anybody that works for a living should have an HSA account. Their medical doctor or the money they spend, cash money on medical, should come before tax. Like I think it's a great thing. And I've started with a cash service provider. I pay them one fee for the year.
I do too. Concierge medicine.
Everything that I do in there is, and I love it. And
I
you know
do
what?
too.
I don't go to the doctor very often.
It's good for the medical providers because they have steady income, and it's good for you because you know if you pick up the phone and call, they're gonna take your call and spend however much time.
They've never ever. And one of the things that at one point I thought I was going to have my gallbladder out. And so he's telling me I have a couple of options. I have a place in Omaha and I have a place in Oklahoma City, cash service. And he said, if I have it done in Manhattan, Kansas, it's going to cost $8,000 to $10,000. If I have it done in one of the other places, it's going to cost $5,000. One's like $5,500. So there's a big cash difference there. But the other thing was, he said, you can look this up online. He said, it's mandatory now. They put it out. He said, look at the outcomes in the hospitals. He said, in Omaha and in Oklahoma City, if there's any complications, you don't pay another penny. In Manhattan, if there's complications, you pay for whatever those complications are. And he said, what do you think the percentage of complications are in Omaha and Oklahoma City? They're some of the lowest complication rates in the United States of America on what they do. because, you know, it means something to them financially.
It's measured on the outcomes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably something that you know we should look at quite a bit there.
I agree. And if you go back to what you just said about the cost of that procedure at these different hospitals, you quoted a price. For the most part, in today's system, without that concierge medicine, today's system, if you go to get an X-ray, I'll bet the person giving you the X-ray doesn't know how much it costs.
Doesn't have a clue what it costs.
Yeah.
Yep, they
And
don't.
so it needs to be transparent. When you and I go out to a bar or we go out to a restaurant, we look at the menu, and the menu has prices on it. If you go to the doctors, there's no menu of what the...
I've always felt like the problem with insurance is when we're counting on somebody to pay our bills for us, we don't care what the bills cost.
Right.
Like as long as it's just costing the insurance company, I don't care how much it costs.
Well,
but we should care how much it costs.
We should care, and maybe there's some savings there as it relates to our deficit and what we're spending on health care. But there again, it goes back to being aware and being concerned about what we're spending in federal government too, because just as you said, when you spend it and it's your money, you're going to be more frugal about it. When people in Washington, D.C. are spending the money, it's someone else's money, and there's no impact on me regardless of the decision I make.
Yeah, and they're all complicated issues, and I'm sure that when you get to Washington, you're going to find out that you know even the system's more complicated than you think.
Well, what's the old saying is, "Be careful what you ask for."
Yeah,
you might
exactly.
Get it.
You might get it. Yeah, that's for sure. One thing that I would tell you is that in terms of the stuff that I've done, and then my friends that I've had in the military and the things that they've done is when we do highly dangerous things, we never think about it. Like it's not like it doesn't enter my mind that this is a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
And I could die doing this. Like it never enters my mind. And I've known guys that have been like injured extremely badly, and they all said, you know, these are pretty hard chargers, but they've all said, well, dying never entered my mind. Well, you know, me and my friends never thought we'd die until we were dead. Running for office is the same way.
Yeah.
They never, ever in their minds thought that they were going to lose. So what's Dave Lindstrom going to do on August the 4th after the primary when he wins the big upset in the state of Kansas?
No, I'm gonna have a heart-to-heart conversation with our campaign chairman and say, now what do we do? How do we plan? How do we go forward here? Do we have a day to take a break?
You should enjoy your win because it's going to be like the newspapers and the media. It's going to be a big thing when Dave Lindstrom wins.
It would be a big deal. But let me tell you this.
Not would. It will be.
This is how I look at that. I'm not. When you're in the playoffs, your goal is to win the Super Bowl. It's not to win the primary. My goal is not to win the primary. My goal is to win in November.
Marv Levy was a great guy.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
He just
No, he didn't get. He got there 4 times. But he got there 4 times in a row.
I know.
Yeah.
He got that close.
Yeah.
Like
so I'm looking forward to serving in Washington. I'm not looking forward to just winning the primary in the state of Kansas. So that's what we're looking at. But come August 5th, we're going to be trying to put together a staff because we think that this will be a campaign on steroids as opposed to being a campaign right now that's just training camp.
Yeah. What about what do you think the family like? What's your plan when you get to what you're gonna rent an apartment? You're gonna buy a house?
I'm going to rent an apartment. I've thought that through.
You taking the family?
My wife will go. My daughters will stay here, and they'll come and visit. But I'm not packing my bags. I'm not measuring the drapes. I'm not being overly optimistic, but I have thought about those things. I'm a Kansan. If I wanted to live in Washington, if I wanted to live someplace else, I could do it far before this election. And so I will get an apartment there because I have to. Because I have to have a residence, I have to have a place to live. But I'll be home, and I'm going to make sure that I understand and always remember who I work for.
What do you think? How do you think working from Washington, having a home in Kansas, and being one of the Chiefs' ambassadors, because that probably won't end, isn't it? And that's still just kind of a.
Oh, yeah, no,
I mean,
I'm-
that's a team you've never
Yeah.
left, right?
I'm not getting a divorce from the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I'm not getting a divorce from the Ambassadors.
Just because they're good right
Yeah,
now.
yeah. Well, no, even I was involved with them when they, I'm used to saying wait till next year.
Right on.
Okay.
I know.
Since for 42 years I've been saying wait till next year. This year I said okay, now it's our time. We did it, and so this is, I'm going to remain the person I am right now. I think anyone and anything can change, but I'll tell you what I pray for every day. Every single day, I wake up and I ask for the courage to do the right thing at the time when I'm tested the most. And I don't know if I will, because I've not been put in those positions all the time. And until you are put in a position like that, you never know.
No, that's true. I'm telling you from experience, I've seen a lot of people who were very confident in
Yeah.
their abilities and what they could do. And
Yeah.
they were 80, 90 pounds overweight, and
Yeah.
they couldn't run a quarter mile, and they couldn't carry 100 pounds into the house, and they
Uh-huh.
couldn't shoot well.
Yeah.
So they weren't going to fare well, but they were very confident
Yeah.
in it. But most of the guys who were very skilled at what they did, and like while they never doubted themselves, they
Yeah.
never counted on what their performance would be
Yeah.
that day.
Yeah. So I ask the good Lord every day for the courage to do the right thing when I am next challenged, and so that's the best I can hope for, and I do think that what I'm doing here is providential. This is not something that is on my bucket list or written in the next chapter of my life. It's something that I feel like I'm being called to do, and I feel very confident about what's going to happen.
I have like one parting question, and then you
Yeah.
can say anything you want to
Yeah.
the 3 people that'll watch this. But my one question is looking back on your life to this point, what was your worst day?
My worst day. I don't know that I've had a worse day. Oh, I can. I'll tell you what was a bad day. This was a bad day, and it was this year. It was during this campaign. It was the week before the Chiefs played in the Super Bowl, a Wednesday before the Sunday game of the Super Bowl. We were scheduled to have a debate on Saturday, our first debate for this race, and the Chiefs made Super Bowl tickets accessible to me, and so I wasn't going to go to the Super Bowl game. I had committed to this race, and so I had a debate on Saturday before the Super Bowl, so I couldn't go to the Super Bowl. But I had access to tickets. And the NFL and the Chiefs make you go down to pick up the tickets in Miami, and so I had to go do that. And so I get on the plane on Wednesday, figuring I could go down Wednesday, pick up my tickets, and I couldn't send a liaison to do it. I had to do it, and then I could come back Wednesday night, prep for the debate Thursday and Friday, and begin the debate Saturday. And so I get on the plane on Wednesday morning. They close the door, they taxi down the runway, and they take off. And I'm sitting in a crowded Southwest flight, and all of a sudden it feels like my belt's a little too tight. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? And I became in excruciating pain, and I didn't know what was going on. Really, I couldn't sit still. And I'm on this flight for 2.5 hours. Finally, the last probably 20 minutes, I fell asleep. And I woke up and the pain had subsided. And so I thought, wow, that must have been just some indigestion. So I get out of the plane. And mind you, this is the worst day. I don't know if a worst day of my life, but it's definitely the worst one this year. And so I get off and I get in a cab and I drive to the hotel, and I'm still feeling good. And I'm thinking this episode's behind me. And just as we pull into the Chiefs hotel, it starts hitting me again, and so I take care of the cab and take care of that. I get into the lobby of the hotel. The pain is worse than it was on the plane. I collapse in the lobby of the hotel, and they call the police, and they bring the ambulance, and they put me in an ambulance. My personal doctor is one of the Chiefs doctors, so he's there. I call his office in Kansas City. They call down to the hotel where I'm at, tell him, your patient is in the ambulance. He comes out to see me. And long story short, I had kidney stones.
Oh,
I wouldn't wish
And
kidney.
you'd never had 'em
I've
before?
never had them before. I wouldn't wish kidney stones on an Oakland Raider.
oh, that's good.
I would not. I'm not kidding. I wouldn't want that. It was the most excruciating thing, and I've been told by men and women that had it that it is excruciating, and the women have said that it's second only to giving birth, the pain that they.
You know, women always say that. I'm not sure. Every time I have a cold, I think it's the worst.
No idea.
you know,
Yeah.
A man cold is far worse than giving birth.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what
So
it-
that was probably my worst day. I ended up being in the hospital for 3 days down there. I ended up missing the first debate, and I missed the Super Bowl too. So it was not a good
So
day.
did you watch the Super Bowl from a hospital room?
I actually got dismissed from the hospital on Friday night, and so I flew home that night, and I watched the Super Bowl from home. But I really didn't really watch it. I was in pain then too. They had corrected the problem, but you're still on. It was still a little bit painful. So, and I've never been in the hospital that long. So yeah, that was my worst day.
So I said it's going to be my last question. What in your life would you define as being perseverance or resilience? Like things that you have worked your way through towards success?
Yeah, I believe that success is different from most people, but the common thread for me and everything that I've done that I've been successful in is having a foundation of people around you who support you, and then having the positive attitude about how you approach things, doing what you say you'll do all the time to the best of your ability, and then treating other people the way you want to be treated if you were in their position. Yeah, I found that that's been, and then working through adversity. You just, there's, life is hard. Life is hard, and if you get successful, I don't know anyone who's been successful in life who it came easy for them. Even the guys that you and I talked about early in this interview that had a lot of talent. They worked at what they did. They may not have worked as hard as it appeared to be for someone else, but you have to work, you have to persevere. Things are tough. And what I'm doing now is one of the more difficult things I've ever done. And there's not a day that I say, boy, I could be doing this instead of that, or I could be doing that instead of this. But you always have to focus on why you're really doing this. And whether it be politics or whether it be professional sports, whether it be law enforcement, whether it be training our military, whether it be being a mom or dad, you have to put the interest of others above your own personal interest, and usually things work out that way.
Do you have any last words for the admiring public out there?
Well, I want to go back to what my mom said, to those whom much is given, much is expected. I've been blessed in my life to have many good things happen, and I think it's incumbent upon me, and it's incumbent upon those of you who are watching, to know that there are people out there supporting you, and that when things get tough, you got to persevere through, and that we have all been blessed to live in this country called the United States of America, and we need to work hard to make it better for everyone. So, and I don't want to be Pollyanna. I'm not trying to be Pollyanna. I think it's just that simple.
Yeah, I mean, my final thoughts is that even as divided as America seems right now, Americans have far more in common than what the political parties and the media would like us to believe. And then it doesn't matter whether we totally don't believe the same things. We still have far more in common than we don't have in common.
We have the greatest nation ever created by man right here.
We need to find a way to get that back somehow.
Yeah, we do.
So to wrap up tonight's podcast, I appreciate you coming, spend the time.
Thank you, Buck.
Coming down to Wamego, seeing the world-famous carousel ring for
I
the
think
first time.
you might come in the building one day and you'll see me sitting in the corner saying, how'd you get in here? I just kind of like it here.
I will tell you out there, if you're looking for somebody that works hard, I don't think any candidate for Senate's put on more miles, shaken more hands, met more people and been honest in the discussions with them than Dave Lindstrom. And you know Dave's a fighter. That defensive line, offensive line is not a kind place to be. So
300-pounders trying to tear your head off all the time.
yeah. And you know it's going to be worse than that because that at least somebody's trying to tear your head off. You can see them. It's going to be a lot of backstabbing and Machiavellian politics, but it's still Kansas needs to send fighters to Washington. And, so I certainly wish you all the luck in the
Thank
world, and I know you're going to do great things.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.